Hello, welcome. This is the Healer and the Dreamer Astrology channel. We're doing a video on the Jupiter Chiron conjunction that happens on March 11 at 10:54 p.m. Healing body and soul. This is Dayana and Martin, and I got the controls today. Hey, welcome everybody. Want to offer special gratitude to all of our friends who have been joining us. The channel is up to 493 subscribers, so
Almost
we're
at 500.
nearing 500. It's exciting, and it's my birthday, so we got birthday flowers to share with you. And Chiron and Jupiter conjunction. That's a lot to be unwrapping, eh? We've been pulling out the books. We got Chiron Healing Body and Soul by Martin Lass. And then what did you get there?
I have Chiron, Rainbow Bridge Between the Inner and Outer Planets by Barbara Han-Clow.
And then I have Melanie Reinhardt's beautiful book, Chiron and the Journey to Healing, an astrological and psychological perspective. This is the book that first kind of got me started on the search for Chiron. So we've been perusing to that and trying to get to the bottom core of what the Jupiter Chiron conjunction is like. What does that feel like to you, Day?
Well, maybe if we just start with breaking down those planets. Well, Chiron is considered an asteroid. It was first noticed on November 1st, 1977, and it was in Taurus, I believe, at the time. When I first got introduced to Chiron, it was in an astrology workshop, probably in 2018, maybe earlier, actually. It must have been earlier. Anywho, and then the term wounded healer was what was given, and that really helped me start to understand and uncover what Chiron's meaning was all about. It has a really wide elliptical orbit, and it goes between Saturn and Uranus on a really wide orbit. So it's about every 52 years it makes an orbit, right?
It's a 50-year cycle.
Depending on where you are on the elliptical, I think it varies a slight bit, but yeah. And so for me, I've been witnessing it as the wounded healer, and also that which gives and can bring many gifts if you do the inner work. What's your relationship or sharing of Chiron?
Well, in my practice, when I run into it with people, I have a client right now that is going through a Chiron return. So Chiron is returning to the natal spot. I know in my own Chiron return, that's when I finally kind of just let go of trying to make it in the material world and just accepted the fact that I was an astrologer and a healer and I needed to fully integrate that. So that was, so I find that in a lot of people, the Chiron return is a very important point. Now, if Chiron is strongly constellated in your chart, either with the sun or the moon, then it is where you connect with your shamanic gifts. Chiron is really a lot about shamanic initiation. Mircea Eliade's book, Shamanism, Archaic Techniques of Ecstasy, talks about shamanic initiation and shamanic illnesses. And so Chiron for many represents the wound of childhood that is the impetus to take up the healing work. So it's paradoxical. It's a grievous wound that really keeps me from being all of who I am, and yet who forces me to develop the healing talents that are necessary for me to cope with the pain that is associated with the wounding. So Chiron, as an archetype, is half horse, half human, that symbolizes the animal and the human in one body. So we're both animals and humans. So that's centaur. It's the divine and the animal. Now, Chiron is the teacher of is a teacher mostly, and he teaches all of the survival arts to the humans, and especially to the sons of and daughters of the gods. So Chiron's famous students are Achilles and Hercules and Asclepius and all of these Greek heroes that are fathered by the gods. So we have the divine creativity combined with the human receptivity that forms the heroes of our world. And so Chiron is their teacher. And so then it's a very important responsibility. He's divine in origin, but lives amongst the mortals. And so lots of symbolism associated with Chiron. And so the wound is incurred when well, there's different telling of the myth. We have 3 different books here, and there's much different pictures, although some of it is very similar. The story that I have that I inherited from Liz Green is that Hercules, when he went and killed the Hydra demon, dipped his arrows in the poison of the Hydra demon, thinking that this was going to be really useful in his adventures. And he left and went to check in and see a spiritual master, and the arrow with the poison cut Chiron on the thigh. And and so there's different tellings of the myths, but what happens is here is the master healer and the master the master healer and the master teacher, eternal God, infected by a mortal wound. So he's immortal, but it's a mortal wound and it's incurable, and yet he's the master healer. And so the paradox of the wounded healer is huge. And any one of us who are really taking the responsibility to heal ourselves and to become healers in one way or the other are confronted with that paradox, that the wound is what drives us to healing. And what we have to be careful for is projecting our own wounding on our patient and dealing with our wound through the patient instead of directly dealing with it ourselves. And so there's a lot that comes wrapped into that. But in the chart of individuals, and I think that's the most important, it represents, and if Chiron is strongly constellated, we're going to see individuals who are called to healing work significantly. And usually we get the sense that there is a medicine woman or a medicine man in the ancestral line somewhere, whose gifts are being passed on to that individual, or that individual is being asked to integrate it. So it's got, so that's kind of how I see my relationship with Chiron.
Love it. And where is Chiron in your chart?
Well, actually, Chiron is at 15 degrees. No, Chiron is in Aquarius. Just Saturn just transited it. But this particular Jupiter Chiron conjunction is right on my ascendant.
Okay.
So then we kind of fleshed out Chiron, but what does a Jupiter Chiron conjunction feel like to you?
To me? So Chiron being that wounded healer, and Jupiter to me makes everything big. It really adds a lot of expansion to things. It's the biggest planet by far, and it's considered a planet of good fortune and luck often. So really bringing a lot of energy to wherever it is. But in this case, it feels a little conflicting in that it's bringing, which is kind of the nature of Chiron, as you just mentioned, but it's bringing a lot of energy to something that is conflicting, Chiron, and also something that takes a lot of work to integrate, that wounded healer aspect of ourself and the paradox within ourself that the wounds cause us to develop and grow and heal, and yet the wound in itself is a hard thing to contest with. So when I see Jupiter and Chiron conjunct, I see a lot of focus and energy put on the work that Chiron is instigating. And so in Aries, then there's a lot of individuality and a lot of focus on learning to step into your own path and know your own worth and follow the beat of your own drum in respect to everything else around, which is not always easy. And especially in our times in this climate right now, it's no surprise that this conjunction's building. I feel it within my personal life, and also I see it within the collective right now here.
So here we have some woodcuts of Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius and Pisces, and here is a young warrior, traveler, adventurer, and Chiron. So in the negative, we have the adventure within us. The adventure within us is wounded, but the other aspect of it too is Jupiter is also pictured in the woodcut as an old wise man, teacher, the rule, you know, in Pisces, and he's also in Sagittarius, and here's the wise healing teacher, and so then we can either be, you know, and again we have that Aries, right? So that the personal, you know, the Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, it's about beginning the adventure and let's go. So Chiron's been travels through Aries for 7 years. Now it's halfway through its trip through Aries. And so Chiron in Aries is our urge to become fully who we are, is kind of wounded by this Chiron. You know, the Chiron in Aries brings the wound to the self-expression. And, you know, so that's the negative aspect of it. And I guess that really is congruent with what a lot of us are feeling. You know, we feel kind of, you know, it's difficult to fully manifest our need to express who we are more fully, which is Aries, but also, you know, the other side of it too is that we feel very pushed towards becoming the healers that we are truly, you know. So it's like, again, it's a paradox. Every astrological alignment can be read positively and negatively, and in a sense it expresses the same thing from two different angles. What about Jupiter in Aries, and what would that feel like
without so much of the Chiron influence?
Well, yeah, just straight up Jupiter Aries, because we've been experiencing Jupiter in Aries for the last year, you know, off and on. Well, Jupiter came in to Aries, stayed for about 6 months, then went back into Pisces, and now, you know, was going to move right through Aries and be out by May, end of May. But what is Aries? What does an Aries Jupiter feel like to you?
We need to look at past forms of Jupiter and Aries, just because this whole transit of Jupiter coming through Aries, Chiron's holding down Aries the whole time. So it's going to kind of, I think, always have this Chiron aspect to it. But Jupiter and Aries, again, Jupiter being that ideally the teacher, the adventure, the information bringer, the expansion and good luck and plenty. Sometimes that can be too much of things, but often it can also bring a lot of good and a lot of hope and a lot of expansion to the self.
Well, Jupiter is you know, associated with Sagittarius and Pisces, and it's very fiery, right? It's like we saw the two woodcuts, you know, the young man that's adventurous and the wise teacher, you know. So there's two, you know, the Sagittarian, who's by the way also a centaur, So this half animal, half divine being that seeks the adventure, so then Jupiter in Aries, then Aries is fiery and solar exaltation of Jupiter. It's in trine to Sagittarius and it's fiery. So then it's like, whoa, so then it's really big. And so we've been feeling that bigness of Jupiter when Jupiter's in Aries, and it's been like that. But because the placement of Chiron there, it's like it's really are having to face our wounding as we try to really show up more fully. It's like in my own journaling, in my own process, I want to show up more fully, which is Jupiter in Aries wants to show up really big, but then I always have to contend with my wounds, Chiron. So in that sense, Chiron, Jupiter, it's interesting, huh?
It is. It reminds me too of like Chiron. I've heard I haven't done as much depth in this aspect of Chiron, but continuously heard is like this rainbow bridge. I've heard that analogy connected with it a lot, and as I've been studying Chiron in preparation, I've felt intuitively more this like cloud come over. It's like it brings this big cloud, and there's this like, I don't know, saying that comes around. It's like, when clouds come, look for the silver lining, or when clouds come, look for the rainbow. And that can be like how we utilize the clouds and or the harder times or the wounds in life to really initiate us into owning our gifts and seeing through the layers of reality that maybe are challenging but are ever passing, and that they're to initiate us into our power. I think Jupiter and Chiron Jupiter, Chiron, and Aries to me all have this similar quality of initiation. So there's this big planetary initiation happening right now, where it's like, if we've made it this far, we just all came through this worldwide shift crisis, and we have been all initiated in some way, shape, or form. And now there's this like step of how do we move forward? And Aries to me is also very much about like inspiration and intuition. And so what is coming through that's inspiring you to initiate yourself into the next version of yourself you want to be?
That's beautiful. So we have a conjunction of Chiron and Jupiter. So what that means is the beginning of a 12-year cycle, where so conjunctions are initiations. They're beginning. It's the beginning of a new cycle, an end. So as Jupiter has come closer and closer, we get an end of a cycle, the previous cycle of Jupiter Chiron. So it's a death in a sense, and then a rebirth, where now we have a beginning of a new cycle. Now, wherever that Jupiter Chiron, it's at 14 degrees Aries. So if you have planets in any of the cardinal signs, so Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, planets at the middle of each of those signs, that Jupiter Chiron will be really powerful. In my own case, I have my ascendant, so Jupiter, Chiron are both moving over my ascendant, and so I'm feeling this really powerfully, especially that Saturn has just crossed my Chiron as well, so then this archetype of the wounded healer is really being constellated in my own process pretty actively. What is the conjunction doing in your chart?
It's in my 5th house.
Of creativity,
family. Yeah.
Nice. And transiting any planets?
No, no planetary aspects in my 5th house.
So that's kind of how you would see the influence of it. Now, how to follow that, so because now Jupiter will move, and then in about 2 years, we're going to have a square of Jupiter Chiron. And then we're going to have an opposition, the full moon. And then we're going to have a waning square and the sextiles and the trines in between. So then this new cycle that you're beginning, you can keep up with it as Jupiter keeps moving, and this initiation will unfold as Jupiter moves forward through your chart, but also through the emerging transit charts. So that's fascinating, and that's kind of how you keep up with it.
So I guess just wanted to share, because I was pulling up dates that so Chiron, when it comes and does a full, like Martin said, this full wheel around the whole zodiac and comes back to its placement for your birth chart, that would look like where it is birth wise. For right now, we're saying that the beginning is the conjunction that's being made for this planetary cycle. But in your birth chart, if you were born between January of 69 to May of 76, you're probably going through your Chiron return. So you'll be feeling this probably extra potent. Whether it's on the degree, depends on where you're born within that time. Probably in the middle, because it's in the middle of the Aries sign, would be the most acute feeling it. And then something else that came up, there's this initiation again, is that around 50, there's this aspect where we, as women, there's typically menopause comes up around that time. And for men, there's andropause and another initiatory factors too. But a lot of women, for menopause, there's this initiation into a new aspect of how you show up in the world and what you're here to offer. And a lot of the times I see a lot of women learn to recognize their inner gifts and give themselves that time and space they need, or if they don't, then sometimes their body makes them. And so there's this beautiful inward journey that can happen around that time. And so if you are going through your Chiron return, all the love and power to you, and learning to find the gifts of your individual path, but also honoring that that is a initiation that all humans go through if they make it that far in life, and it takes a lot of work, but often comes out with great benefit.
It's a very key time in a person's development. Turning 50 is really symbolized by that Chiron return, and it's a you're getting into your 50s, and for a woman it's very difficult, and for a man too. But it's also a great time of harnessing those gifts of healing. And if you haven't worked on it, then you really become very motivated by this particular crisis. So we did a chart of whoops. Excuse me. We didn't click on it properly. Boom. Okay, here we go. So then we did like a horary chart of the moment where Jupiter and Chiron come into conjunction. So this is 10:54 p.m. on the 11th of March. And a brief analysis of that chart shows us, one, that Chiron and Jupiter constellates the moon and Uranus, or the light bringer, Jupiter, emancipation, Chiron, the wounded healer. So I paraphrase that to mean the quest to free and heal the mother archetype, the lunar archetype, so moon, Uranus opposition, Jupiter, Chiron. So a very, that's a very reoccurring theme in our process. And then the 4 planets in Pisces, Mercury, Sun, and Neptune in square to Mars. Mars is ruled by Gemini. Mars in Gemini is about writing. Mercury giving voice to the need for redemption. Neptune, Sun. And so that's on the solar aspect. And then we have that Venus Pluto square and redemption of the sacred feminine. And then we have that Pluto coming into Aquarius and Saturn coming into Pisces. So this whole Jupiter Chiron conjunction as a background of the era changing, with Pluto coming into Aquarius, Saturn coming into Pisces, and this mystical urge to give voice to this transformation of the sacred feminine. That's kind of how I paraphrased it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I love it. I love the connection with our inner economy and the aspects of our family within ourselves that you can pull on there.
Cool. So we also did some quotes for you. We got so the archetypal, and then we pulled out some quotes from both books that we had. So Chiron, Healing the Body and Soul by Martin Lass. And so this is interesting, gives us some, do you want to read?
Sure. So Jupiter represents our capacity to receive abundance in its many forms, to our return our inner abundance to the world in our form of divine design. On the positive side, it represents good fortune and wisdom. On the negative side, it represents excessiveness, waste, childishness, and folly.
So that's the two sides of Jupiter, right? It's like giving form to our divine design or acting like a child and wasting our time, and so that's the paradox of Jupiter, which is interesting. Chiron Jupiter aspects are extremely powerful in their potential to awaken us to our wounds and to reveal our wounds inner wisdom. In this way, Jupiter gives us our first glimpse of the guiding hand in our lives.
I love that. Again, it feels like a way of communicating that that rainbow bridge and the connection with the divine that Chiron brings, but not always through easy aspect. Chiron Jupiter aspects also bring issues of freedom to the fore. Physical freedom, as well as spiritual, ideological, philosophical, and political freedom.
That's really kind of seems very thematic to our times, huh? Chiron Jupiter is about expressing our freedom. Chiron conjunct Jupiter represents the potential marriage of healing and wisdom acquired by delving into our wounds and issues. So we need to do the work and seeing the hidden plan that lies behind them. Our wounds are our gift. This aspect can be the mark of a great healer and or teacher. This aspect generally accompanies issues and wounds concerning justice, fairness, equality, morals, ethics, excesses, wastage, and deficits. Oh, so we're bound to hear more about that, huh?
Yeah, nature of these times we're in.
Uh-huh.
Chiron's been in Aries since 2018, and it's going to be there until 2026. So this is not a new theme, and it's still one we're unpacking, I think, collectively.
Well, with Jupiter visiting, that really is, putting some accent to that, huh?
Pressure to the metal.
And this is Chiron and the Healing Journey by Melanie Reinhardt. You want to go?
Sure. So Chiron Jupiter contacts often have messianistic tendencies.
Messianic.
What is messianic?
The Messiah?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Messianic tendencies.
The nature, Jupiter especially, that makes sense. Sorry, so the nature of their message being indicated by the signs and houses involved. So
where is Chiron in your chart will give you an idea of where that wounded, that childhood wound, that ancestral wound, but also the gift to heal my ancestral wounds.
They're the great seekers after an elusive enlightenment, panacea, or ultimate truth.
We could experience quests, journeys, and pilgrimages that are immensely productive of healing and inner growth. The crucial factor is our willingness to reflect deeply on our experiences, to balance our expansion with enough stillness and introversion where some inner synthesis, Jupiter, can be reached. If we let Chiron and Jupiter run away with us, we are in danger of leaving a trail of unprocessed life experience behind us, become ungrounded and losing our humanity.
I see that as like the Aries archetype too, where there's so much gift there, but if it goes too fast or if it's not aware of its pace, it can kind of leave behind all the gifts and never understand what it was truly doing.
And Melanie Reinhardt quotes a quote from the
I love this
from the Quran. Pray to Allah, but tie up your camel. So you can do the work, but also be in the world.
Yeah. With Chiron Jupiter, we have an astonishing ability to bounce back from illness, personal tragedies, and crisis of faith. We are very alive to the archetypical level of life in these eras, but sometimes also prone to excesses, fantasies, and messianism.
So, interesting, huh? So,
Mhm.
the resiliency, towards illness, and that's really important, huh? And really being called, huh? It's like we can't be very good healers if we don't heal ourselves, huh? And I think that that's the main thing about Chiron, is to have the courage to do the work to heal ourselves. And so then we become really resilient in the face of illness. The capacity to teach and inspire others and to assist them in the process of finding meaning in their own lives. That's beautiful Jupiter Chiron symbolism.
Mhm. Yeah, Jupiter, so powerfully associated with meaning of things. Sometimes indicate a world to our sense of hope,
A
a
wound.
wound to our sense of hope, optimism, and confidence in the bounty of life's possibilities.
That's that Chiron in Aries. It's there's we may feel really wounded in expressing these things.
Yeah, yeah. The light and the dark are pretty powerful in Aries there.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging our deep need for an inner source of wisdom and guidance for ourselves, we can perhaps eventually relinquish these extremes and find the inner teacher speaking quietly within.
And that's really important, isn't it? Is to realize that, we can project these archetypes and these situations in the outer world, but really that Jupiter, Chiron, they're archetypes within us, and we have to learn to recognize them in our own process, always whispering the wisdom and the healing that we need. And so having that, because Jupiter can be very extroverted, and then that's the adventurer who doesn't care about anything. But then introverting Jupiter, then we become the wise teacher, and in a sense, you have to be a young adventurer to become a wise old man. And so those two are I kind of reflected that, I have Jupiter in Sagittarius really strong myself, and I was reckless for years and years and years, and now, like in my older age, I'm really cautious and kind of have developed a different relationship with Jupiter. How's your relationship with Jupiter?
Jupiter's part of my Scorpio stellium. I feel like it kind of eats up the stellium some days, and if I'm not cautious, it definitely rules the show.
And kind of tends to go, huh?
That's my Mars ruling the stellium.
Mars Jupiter superhero.
This Chiron for me is in my 10th house, so it brings me a
So
lot of awareness.
your destiny is to manifest Chiron. And what sign is Chiron for you?
Virgo.
Virgo. So Liz Green and Melanie Reinhardt, and I think everybody
Barbara Chow too,
assumes that Chiron is the co-ruler of Virgo along with Mercury. And so so you said Virgo Chiron, so then in the 10th house, so that's our medicine woman right here. It's a great responsibility to integrate, and yet you're well on your way. That was fun. How did you like this one?
That was great.
Yeah,
we touched on all the things that I wanted to. How about you?
Beautiful. Yes, quite happy, and we wish you the best with this transit and with the upcoming spring equinox and the beginning of the astrological year. We'll keep it coming. We'll keep those videos coming for you. Thanks for subscribing and asking questions and sharing these contents with your tribe. We depend on you for our growth, and we try to do our service. I'm with Dayana.
Hola.
And this is MC Starman saying See you next time. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
All the power to your process.